There is a federal institution that touches every single address in the country 6 days a week, and most people only think about it when something goes wrong.
Which is the strange thing about it. A service that succeeds by being invisible. You notice the pothole, never the road.
And yet, think about the last time you actually looked at your mailbox. Little metal flag standing there like a soldier. Somebody designed that flag. Somebody decided you should be able to tell the carrier from the road, I have got something for you.
That's a lovely place to start. I'm Maya Okafor, and I'll be the one keeping us honest about where this thread is going, because I have a feeling the three of us could get lost in mailboxes for an hour.
I'm Hassan Ali. I tend to be the person in the room asking, yes, but what's the source for that? So consider yourselves warned.
And I'm Kenji Sato. I collect the small physical details, the flag, the leather satchel, the sound of a sorting machine. I once spent an afternoon in a mail processing plant just watching envelopes fry, and I have not been the same since.
Right, so let's not bury the scale of this. The Postal Service in the United States predates the country itself, more or less. There was a postal system running under the Continental Congress before there was a constitution.
Benjamin Franklin is the name everyone reaches for, and in this case, it's earned. He was appointed the first Postmaster General under the Continental Congress in 1775. He'd already run colonial mail for the British Crown before that, so the man knew the roads.
And he actually rode them. He measured routes. There's this image of Franklin in a carriage with an odometer of sorts, counting the turns of the wheel to work out the true distance between towns. That's not a bureaucrat. That's a man in the mud.
And why does that matter, the measuring? Because if you don't know the real distance, you can't set a fair rate, and you can't tell whether a rider is dawdling.
Exactly. It's the beginning of the idea that mail is a system you can reason about. Schedules, distances, costs, rather than a favor a rider does for you when he happens to be going that way.
A favor is unreliable. A system you can build a country on.
And this is what surprises people. The post office isn't just some agency that grew up later. It's written into the founding document.
The Constitution gives Congress the power to establish post offices and post roads. That's Article 1. It sits there among the core powers. Coin money, raise armies, establish post offices. They put the mail in the same breath as the army.
Because what is a country, really, before radio, before telephone? It's a collection of towns that mostly can't hear each other. The mail was the nervous system. It's how Boston found out what Charleston was thinking.
And there was a deliberate choice baked in early. The postal system carried newspapers cheaply, on purpose.
That's right. And I want to be careful here, because it's easy to romanticize. But the early postal laws did give newspapers dramatically reduced rates. The thinking was explicit. A republic needs an informed citizenry, so the state should subsidize the flow of information.
They basically decided democracy runs on paper, and somebody has to move the paper.
So the mail is doing something we'd now call almost infrastructure for the mind, not just birthday cards.
And it was the great majority of the federal government's physical footprint for a long stretch of the 19th century. If you were an ordinary American and you touched the federal government at all, you touched it at the post office. That was the government for most people.
The postmaster was often the most important person in a small town. After the preacher, that job was patronage gold. You handed it out to your friends when your party won.
Which is a real part of the story, and not a flattering one. The spoil system ran straight through the post office for decades. Jobs given as rewards, not on merit.
And yet, think about what that also meant. The post office reached into places the rest of the government simply didn't. A courthouse, a customs house, those clustered where the money and the ports were. The post office went everywhere.
That's the tension in one institution. The most corruptible arm of government was also the most democratic in its reach. The same network the parties fought over was the one that let a homesteader vote by reading a ballot argument printed 1,000 miles away.
Corrupt and indispensable, holding hands, very human.
Let's stay with the people for a moment, because Kenji, I think this is where your plant afternoon comes in.
Gladly. So, the carrier. Think about what that person actually is in a community. They come to your door every day. They know if the mail's piling up, which sometimes means someone inside has fallen and can't get to the door.
There are real stories of carriers being the ones who noticed.
Absolutely. The carrier is a thread of attention running down every street. And then there's the sheer romance of the hard routes, the mule trains that still to this day carry mail down into the Grand Canyon to one community at the bottom.
That one I can confirm, and it genuinely delights me. There is a village at the base of the canyon that receives mail by mule. It's not a legend, it's a live operation.
There's something perfect about that. The most modern nation on Earth, and at the bottom of a canyon, it's a mule.
And go back to the 1800s, the railway post office. Clerks in a moving train car sorting mail at speed, snatching mailbags off a hook as the train roared past the station without stopping. They had to memorize thousands of routing schemes. There were exams. It was a craft.
They were tested relentlessly, as I understand it, on where a given town's mail should go. Get it wrong, and the letter goes hundreds of miles astray. These were skilled workers doing something closer to what a machine does now, in their heads, on a shaking train.
Picture it. The car is rocking. The light is bad. The bags are coming at you. And you have to know that a town in one county routes through a junction 2 states over. And you have to know it cold because there's no time to look it up.
It's almost athletic. Memory as a physical discipline.
And it's the part of the history that gets erased because the work eventually moved into machines. When a job becomes a machine, we stop remembering it was ever a skill.
And that's the thing people miss. The romance and the grind are the same thing. The Pony Express gets all the poetry.
And it lasted, 18 months?
Roughly. It was brief, and it lost money, and it was made obsolete almost immediately by the telegraph. But it lives enormous in the imagination, far out of proportion to what it actually did.
Because a boy on a horse outrunning danger is a better story than a clerk passing an exam. But the clerk moved 1,000 times more mail.
There's a lesson in that about how we remember infrastructure at all. We keep the horse and forget the timetable.
We keep whatever fits on a stamp, ironically.
This feels like the right moment for the big misconception, because there's one that colours every argument people have about the post office today.
The tax one. People say the Postal Service is losing money. It's a drain on my taxes. And the basic fact is that it is overwhelmingly funded by its own revenue, by selling stamps and services, not by a line item in your tax bill.
So when you buy a stamp, that's the model. That's supposed to pay for the whole thing.
For the most part, yes. It's structured to cover its costs through what it sells. Now, its finances are really troubled. I won't pretend otherwise.
And there's your one truly, Hassan. Spend it wisely.
Noted. But the point stands. The losses are real, and they're mostly not coming out of general taxes the way people imagine.
And here's the piece that makes people's eyes go wide. There was a law passed in 2006 that required the Postal Service to pre-fund retiree health benefits decades into the future on a schedule almost no other institution faced.
That's accurate, and I want to state it carefully. The 2006 law imposed an obligation to set aside enormous sums for future retiree health costs, front-loaded in a way that put billions of dollars of paper losses on the books every year. A great deal of the Postal Service is bleeding money story traces back to that single requirement.
So a chunk of the crisis was, in a sense, manufactured by an accounting rule.
A chunk. I'd resist saying all of it, because underneath the pre-funding drama, there's a real slower problem.
The letters stopped coming.
Before we go there, though, help me understand why that pre-funding rule existed at all. Somebody wrote it. What was the argument for it?
The stated logic was prudence. If you promise workers health coverage in retirement, you should have the money set aside rather than passing the bill to some future decade. On its face, that's responsible.
So it's not villainous on paper.
No, and I'd be wary of anyone who tells you it was a plot. The problem was the aggressiveness of the schedule. Being asked to fund far into the future all at once is a burden very few organizations, public or private, ever carry. Reasonable goal? Punishing timetable.
Say more about that, Kenji, because I think this is the quiet heart of it.
First-class mail, the letter, the bill, the check. That was the money maker for generations. High volume, every household, every month. And then email arrived, then online billing, then everyone started paying with a tap on a phone. The letter just evaporated.
First-class mail volume peaked around the mid-2000s and has been falling ever since. That's the structural thing. The profitable product shrank, and it's not coming back.
But packages went the other way.
Right, and this is the beautiful irony. The same internet that killed the letter created the package boom. You order a thing at midnight in your pajamas, and 2 days later it's on your porch. Somebody has to carry it up that path, and a lot of the time that's the same postal network.
Packages are heavier, bulkier, and more expensive to handle than letters, so it's not a clean one-for-one swap. But the network, that machine that already goes to every address every day, turns out to be enormously valuable in an age of home delivery.
Explain that a little more, because I think the economics are counterintuitive. Why does a letter make money and a package not, when a package costs more to send?
Because a letter is nearly weightless and completely standardized. You can run millions of them through a sorting machine that reads the address and flings them into bins. The cost per letter, once the network exists, is tiny. A package is bulky, oddly shaped, has to be weighed and handled, sometimes lifted by a person. The revenue is higher, but so is the effort behind it.
A letter is a whisper going through the pipe. A package is a piece of furniture.
And that's the asset nobody could build from scratch now.
That's exactly it. The universal service obligation, the promise to deliver to every address at a uniform price, whether you're in Manhattan or at the bottom of that canyon, is the thing that would be impossible to replicate. No private company would ever choose to build it.
A private carrier looks at a ranch 50 miles down a dirt road and says, "That cost me $20 to reach. I'm not doing it for a stamp." The post office says, "We are going anyway."
And in fact, the private carriers sometimes hand their rural last-mile deliveries to the Postal Service, precisely because it already goes there.
That happens, yes. The competitor is also, in places, the customer, which tells you how unusual this network is.
The package leaves a private truck at the edge of nowhere and finishes its journey in a little white postal van because only the van was ever going to that mailbox anyway.
So here's where I want to push us, because I think you and I, Hassan, might actually land in different places on this.
Go on.
The universal service obligation, delivering to every address at the same price regardless of what it costs. I think that's the whole point. I think it's a public good, like a lighthouse or a road. And you don't ask a road to turn a profit. You fund it because a country that's stitched together is worth more than the ledger says.
And I don't disagree that it's valuable. Where I hesitate is the leap from valuable to therefore it needn't be sustainable. Because an institution that loses money year after year isn't automatically safe just because we love it. Underfunded promises have a way of decaying. Slower delivery, closed offices, the service quietly getting worse until the public good you're defending is hollowed out anyway.
But that's an argument for funding it properly, not for asking it to behave like a business.
Or it's an argument for being honest, that public good and pays for itself with stamps may be intention, and one of them has to give. I'm really not sure the evidence tells us which.
Let me put pressure on my own side then. If I say fund it like a road, someone has to write the cheque, and that cheque competes with schools and hospitals. I can't pretend that trade-off vanishes just because I find the mail beautiful.
That's the concession I'd want on the table. And I'll offer one back. The road analogy does hold in one sense. We don't ask each individual mile of highway to earn its keep. We fund the network and let the busy stretches carry the empty ones.
The city letters subsidizing the canyon mule.
Precisely. My worry is only that the busy stretches are thinning, so the cross-subsidy has less to draw on than it used to.
And there it is. You two have found a real fault line, and I want to name it plainly rather than smooth it over, because I don't think the history settles it.
No, it doesn't.
Maya's saying, it's a road, stop counting. Hassan saying, a road you refuse to pay for still crumbles. And the thing is, both of those can be true at once. The disagreement isn't about the facts. It's about what a country owes the far ends of itself.
That's a fair statement of it. I'd add only that I'm not arguing to shrink it. I'm arguing that loving something isn't the same as paying for it, and we tend to confuse the two.
And I'd say sometimes you decide something is worth having before you've balanced the books, and that decision is itself a kind of civic act. But I'll grant you, I can't prove the money works out. I don't think either of us can.
Which is a good place to be stuck, honestly. Two people who agree on almost everything, landing softly on opposite sides of the one thing the numbers won't decide for us.
Let's carry that unresolved and turn to the last question. What does this whole strange institution teach us? Kenji, start us somewhere concrete.
And it teaches something about time horizons. The post office was built on the assumption that connecting the country was worth doing before it was profitable. The newspaper subsidy, the rural routes, that's a kind of patience most institutions no longer have.
There's a name for those rural routes, isn't there? The free delivery to the countryside that came in around the turn of the 20th century.
Rural free delivery, yes, phased in around the 1890s and early 1900s. Before that, a farmer had to travel into town to collect mail. Bringing it to the farm gate was transformative. It pulled isolated households into the national conversation.
Imagine that. You are on a farm 20 miles from anywhere, and suddenly the newspaper, the seed catalogue, the letter from your son who moved west, it all comes to your gate. That's not a convenience. That's the end of loneliness for a whole way of life.
And it reshaped commerce too. The mail order catalogue only works if the mail reaches the farm.
The great catalogue houses depended on exactly that reach. You could order a whole house from a catalogue in kit form and have it delivered. The network made a national market possible for people who'd never see a city.
A house in the mail! Where by rail in pieces, but ordered through that same paper network.
And think about what that did to prices out there. Before the catalogue, a farmer bought from the one store in town at whatever the store charged. Suddenly, there's a book on the kitchen table quoting city prices.
It broke local monopolies with a postage stamp. The town merchants hated it, understandably. But for a rural family, it meant the same goods at something closer to a fair price. That's the network doing something political, without anybody calling it politics.
The mail as a quiet leveler. It didn't argue. It just showed up with a cheaper plow.
So the lesson underneath all of this might be that infrastructure is a decision about who counts. Every address, same price. That's a sentence about equality written in logistics.
I'll accept that as the through line, even with my ledger worries intact. The obligation to reach everyone is a moral statement dressed up as an operational rule. My only footnote is that moral statements still have to be paid for by someone, and pretending otherwise is how you lose them.
And Maya's footnote to your footnote is that some things are worth paying for before you can prove the return.
We're going to be footnoting each other into the sunset. Let's land it. We came in on a mailbox flag and we've ended up on what a country owes its most distant citizen. That's a good day's travel.
For me, the thing I'll carry out is the mule at the bottom of the canyon and the clock on the shaking train. The romance and the grind, same thread. That's the whole institution in 2 pictures.
For me, it's the discipline of separating the real problem from the manufactured one. The letters really did leave. That's true, and it's hard, and no accounting trick caused it. But a lot of the panic was a rule, not a reality, and it matters to tell those apart.
And for me, it's that we didn't resolve the big one, and we shouldn't have. Whether you fund the far ends of the country because the books say so, or in spite of what the books say, that's a values question, and the 3 of us reading it differently is more useful than a fake agreement.
I'd rather leave it open and clear than closed and false.
2 roads, one of us counting, one of us not, and the mule carrying the mail down anyway.
The mail must go through, even when we can't agree on who should pay for the road. Thanks for building this one with me, truly. First time out, and I'd do it again tomorrow.
Likewise.
Any time. Bring the mailboxes.
This episode was generated with AI by Demades.